On May 3, 2006, an Amavia Airlines-owned Airbus A320 was busy preparing for a late-day flight. The flight was numbered U8-967 and had a route from Zvartnots, Armenia to Sochi, Russia. The flight distance was 500 kilometers with an estimated flight time of 1 hour. The captain, Mr. Grigor Grigorian, was 40 years old and had 5,458 hours of flight experience, including 1,436 hours with A320. He joined Amavia in 1997 as a co-pilot on Yak-40 and decided to switch to A320 in 2004. This was also his first time working with Western aircraft, as he had spent a significant amount of time on outdated and manual Russian planes. As a result, the captain had to spend a considerable amount of time getting acquainted with the new aircraft. The first officer, Mr. Armen Davtyan, was 29 years old and had 2,185 hours of flight experience, including 1,022 hours with A320. He completed his basic training at the Ulanovska Civil Aviation School and graduated in 1999. Prior to this, Mr. Davtyan was a co-pilot on Tu-154, another Russian aircraft. He successfully completed his Airbus A320 flight training at the Aviation Academy in Stockholm, Sweden, with good results. There were a total of 113 people on board the aircraft, including 105 passengers and 8 crew members. The majority of the passengers were from Russia and Armenia. The Airbus A320 aircraft, with registration number EK32009, was purchased used by Amavia from Ansett, Australia in 2004. After nearly 11 years of operation for 2 airlines, the plane had accumulated over 28,000 commercial flight hours. About 40 minutes after takeoff, in the dark of night, the plane was approaching Sochi Airport, in the airspace of the Russian Federation. The plane was stabilized at an altitude of 34,000 feet. Both pilots were awake throughout the flight, but neither had slept enough before this flight. As the plane approached Sochi Airport, it constantly entered areas of turbulence. The plane's cabin shook, waking up most of the passengers in the middle of the night. Feeling that there was a weather issue, the crew contacted the non-radar control at Sochi to check the weather conditions there. At Sochi Airport, it was raining heavily with thunder and lightning. The cloud ceiling was very low compared to the ground. Almost all flights were diverted to backup airports in the area. ATC informed U8-967 that visibility was 1,500 meters, the cloud ceiling was 150 meters, and it was raining heavily and not suitable for landing at this time. Right now, the captain is getting angry with ATC because before takeoff, the captain contacted ATC Sochi and received confirmation that the airport was still suitable for landing. The atmosphere in the cockpit has never been as tense and exhausting as it is now. There is no other option for the crew but to choose to return to the departure airport Zvartnots. At this point, the exhaustion doubles as the pilots understand that going back will disrupt their entire flight schedule for the coming days. While returning, the captain tries to find a way for ATC Sochi to allow the plane to land. In Russia, ATC has the authority to decide whether a plane is allowed to land or not. At this point, the captain lies to ATC, saying that high-ranking officials from Russia and Armenia are on board and that they need to arrive in Sochi early. Immediately, ATC in Sochi changes the weather information and confirms that the weather will improve, allowing flight U8-967 to return and descend to approach Sochi. Satisfied, the captain starts to return to the route to Sochi. At the same time, while returning, ATC allows flight U8-967 to descend to 12,000 feet. Unlike Russian planes, the A320 has a modern computer system that can calculate the appropriate descent speed at the exact position the pilot wants. For example, if the plane is at 10,000 feet and wants to descend to 5,000 feet at a certain position on the runway, the computer will calculate the descent rate to ensure the plane descends to the correct altitude when passing through that position. Due to being familiar with Russian aircraft, the captain believed that this capability was not accurate. Therefore, he always chose to lower the altitude by setting the descent speed manually. The crew also reduced communication with ATC because they were afraid that ATC would interfere with their landing. After more than an hour since takeoff, flight U8-967 is preparing to enter the landing path on runway 06 of Sochi Airport. The plane will fly a circuit into the airport at a position offshore of the Black Sea. Because the pilot chose to lower the altitude by setting the descent speed manually, the aircraft is currently too high, which is not suitable for landing. At this point, ATC proactively contacted and requested that flight U8-967 must descend faster, otherwise, they will miss the landing. At this point, all the words from ATC made the captain uncomfortable. He thought that ATC was trying to pick a fight with them. Both had bad communication, including swearing. The plane began to lower its altitude faster to catch up with runway 06. The captain turned off the autopilot to land, and the wind and turbulence were quite strong at the moment. Due to the thin clouds at low altitude, the runway appears and disappears when viewed from the cockpit. Now both pilots just want to land immediately because they are exhausted with this flight, including the lack of sleep beforehand. The weather is getting worse, with strong winds, thunderstorms, and rough seas. ATC felt that landing was too risky and instructed flight U8-967 to discontinue descent, turn right, and climb to 2,000 feet. Turning right and climbing to 2,000 feet is a standard procedure that aircraft must follow when landing is aborted. ATC provided accurate guidance. ATC cancelled landing in the last few seconds, causing the captain to become agitated in the cockpit. In a fit of anger, instead of selecting 2,000 feet as instructed by ATC, the captain turned the knob on the control panel, selecting an arbitrary target altitude of 3,200 feet and activated the autopilot, while also turning the aircraft right to a heading of 25 degrees. For some reason, after the autopilot was activated, the nose of the aircraft suddenly pitched up. A dangerous speed warning sounded, catching both pilots off guard, and the computer system began to intervene to save the aircraft. 8 seconds after the warning, the captain suddenly realized he had forgotten to increase the thrust of the two engines when raising the altitude of the plane. He quickly increased the power to regain a safe speed. Unable to maintain a safe airspeed, the lift on the two wings also decreased. The plane began to lose altitude. Due to speed management, the captain forgot to maintain balance for the plane as it turned to the right. The captain continued to push the control stick to the right, while the co-pilot panicked and tried to push it in the opposite direction to the left. The plane continued to lose altitude. Flight U8-967 ended its journey in the Black Sea, along with the lives of all 113 people on board. After the plane went missing, ATC and Sochi did not allow any helicopters to enter the area due to the bad weather. It wasn't until 7:30 a.m. the next day that the rescue teams discovered the first 9 bodies and the tail of the plane. The Federal Air Transport Agency of Russia, in coordination with the Armenian government and with the support of Airbus, conducted an investigation into the accident. The pilot's error was the main cause of the horrific crash. Both pilots had little understanding of the Airbus A320's flight control system. The captain operated the autopilot system poorly and did not grasp the core of the A320's autopilot modes. Upon reviewing the captain's records, investigators discovered that he had failed a routine exam a year earlier and had several unstable issues, but he passed the subsequent test. Instead of selecting 2,000 feet as instructed by ATC, the captain chose 3,200 feet, which was the initial cause of the aircraft entering a dangerous state. The Airbus computer was set to calculate the necessary altitude increase. If the required altitude increase was less than 1,200 feet, the aircraft would gently increase its altitude, but if it was more than 1,200 feet, the effort to gain altitude would be stronger. At that time, the plane was flying at an altitude of about 1,000 feet. If the captain had followed ATC and selected 2,000 feet on the control panel, the required altitude increase would have been 1,000 feet. The plane would have then gradually increased its altitude. However, he set it to 3,200 feet, which meant that an additional 2,200 feet of altitude was needed. Therefore, the computer pushed the nose of the plane up to quickly reach the target altitude. In particular, when gaining altitude, both pilots forgot to increase the thrust, causing the plane to lose speed and enter an aerodynamic stall. In the final seconds of panic, both pilots clashed over control. The captain tried to push the control stick to the right, while the co-pilot pushed it to the left. In reality, the A320's automatic computer system could have saved flight U8-967. But because of the mistakes made due to a lack of solid knowledge of flying, the entire passenger and crew were involved in the horrific accident. Currently, many passengers use offensive language towards airlines and flight crews when their flights have to land at another airport due to bad weather. But remember, they are working for the safety of the passengers, not like the flight U8-967 we just saw. Please leave your thoughts in the comments section below the video. If you find the video helpful and informative, please support us with a like and a subscribe. We look forward to seeing you in the next videos.